And so here we go. Let me share. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get rolling. Before that, you guys are supposed to remind me that I'm supposed to take attendance for Dr. Taylor. Let me do that. And then we'll get started. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. So we do this every year around this time, and we have a workshop really that's designed to help you get through your end of year student learning outcomes assessment. And at the very beginning, I realized that, we were just talking about how busy it is in April, and, we've got finals week coming, and then graduation is a little bit earlier than normal. And you've got all of these papers to grade and all of these tests to grade. And I know it can be underwhelming to try to do um, really good assessments. You just want to get them done because I know you just want to get out of here and get down to your summer plans. I totally understand that. So it can be overwhelming. And so just from the get-go, I want to encourage you that if you need any sort of feedback as you're doing your assessments, please reach out, because I would much rather you see you do the exercise correctly and in a way that SAC-COC or CPE would expect. That way we will be considered compliant. So what we want to do today is we want to do a very brief refresher course on how we want to do assessment through both SAC-COC and CPEIs. And you'll notice, if you've seen this presentation in the past, that we didn't have CPE on this list previously, but now we do. So we want to kind of go through that a little bit. We also want to do some sort of refresher on how we enter, kind of the nuts and bolts, how we enter those assessments in Anthology. And then we want to talk about SLO improvement plan templates. And finally, if you have any questions, we definitely want to do that. So this is Kathy Hunt's slide that she has provided, and we've used year after year. What are student learning outcomes? And so we call them SLOs sometimes, but they are the knowledge, skills, and behaviors, abilities that a student has attained from his or her engagement in educational experience. So these are statements, these are assessments that we use to measure a student, to the level of learning that a student has achieved through some sort of assessment to determine if they have learned. So that's what SLOs, or student learning outcomes, very simply are. So I talked a little bit about, we have some requirements from both SAC-COC, our accrediting agency, as well as CPE, which is the Council for Post-Secondary Education. As you may or may not know, they are requiring us to do reviews of both our AA and AS programs once every 3 or 4 years. And so this is from their brand new template that just came out in the fall. They ask us, question B.1, briefly describe the assessment process used to evaluate the program and explain how the results of those assessments have been used to make improvements to the program. Please provide specific examples linking assessment results to improvement efforts. To me, that sounds like student learning outcome assessment. So now CPE is getting into the SLO game, and they're wanting to have strong examples of assessments. Also, as you're familiar with, we talk a lot about standard 8.2.B, which is student learning outcomes for general education. We're coming up on our 5th year review. So on the 5th year review, we don't have to report on 8.2.B, but we have to report on 8.2.A, which is outcomes for AA and AS programs. Well, because general education is part of those programs, then we have to provide our general education SLO examples. So as this particular outcome reads, or this requirement from SAC-COC reads, we have to identify those outcomes, we have to assess those outcomes, and then we have to provide evidence that we've sought improvement based on analysis. for each of our educational programs. Now, this 8.2.A is kind of an infamous one for SAC-COC. This is the latest data that we have for them. And as many of you may know, we have a three-part review when it comes to the decennial. It's not as rigorous on the fifth year in terms of all of these reviews, but they are going to be looking at them. So just to kind of keep in mind that 8.2 is very much 8.2.A is very much in the forefront of our reviewers' minds. When we go to the ALF site review, which is the first step of review, 47% of our institutions are considered not compliant on this outcome. And that is the number 6 out of 74 different standards that they have. It's the number 6 most cited as non-compliant. When we get to the offsite visit, we still have 22% of institutions that are not compliant. And then it jumps up to the number 2 most cited. And then if it were to continue on to the board of directors review, they're still finding 9% of institutions that aren't compliant. And that drives it up to number 1. So I say all that just to really emphasize this is a really, really important thing that we're doing. It's really important that we do it correctly and in a manner that SAC-COC expects. So typically I do some spot reviews of our SLOs. And so I wanted to share with you what are some of the biggest issues that we found with our non-compliant, some of those issues that I found. So the biggest thing that I find is that we're lacking in the information that we put in the use of results field and in the improvement plan field. And those map directly to the red text that we see on this slide. That's that standard that I just read to you, that we're not providing evidence of seeking improvement based on analysis of the results for each of our educational programs. What does that really mean? Well, when we look at that outcome, it's in 3 parts. We do really, really well with identifying those outcomes. They're defined. We know exactly what they are. The college has 25 different outcomes. And then we do assessments. We do a lot of assessments. We do really well with them, except we fall short on the last part. And this is where we're found non-compliant a lot of times. And that is we don't reflect on how effective our previous improvements were, and then we don't create appropriate improvement plans for the next cycle. So, it's this third piece of it where we're often found non-compliant. So to demonstrate use of results, there are 2 tests that you have to ask yourself. Number 1, the thing that I said that I was going to do last year or last term. So maybe last term I said to improve my outcome. Maybe I said I was going to do maybe a pre-test, or maybe I was going to do additional video review, that sort of thing. That thing that I said that I would do last year, was it effective? Now, it's okay if it wasn't effective. You just have to talk about it. And then you need to have some sort of data-informed reason why it was or wasn't effective. You have to explain why it wasn't. So using that, if you pass both of those tests, then chances are you're going to be compliant. So what I provided for you guys here in these slides, and I will share out the slides, that way you have this text. This is sample boilerplate language that if you use this, you are definitely going to be compliant with the use of results. And you can use this. You have permission just to use this text, but you need to say something like, last semester, I said that I would do blank, okay? Whatever those improvement plan details were last semester, last year, to improve results for this outcome. I believe that this improvement plan was or was not effective because, so maybe the reason that it was effective is because maybe scores went up 5% over the last semester. Maybe you had a higher pass rate. I don't know. It really is going to depend on the assessment. But make certain that you list a data-informed reason there. If you put that in, you're going to be compliant on use of results. So Maybe what that looks like. Here's maybe an example. Last year, I said that I would provide a pretest to assess student understanding before teaching the material in order to improve results for this outcome. I believe that this improvement plan was effective because students scored fairly well in the pretest and overall scores on the assessment improved over last year's results by 5%. This is an example that checks all of the boxes. If you do this, you're going to be found compliant, and it's really, really going to make it a whole lot easier for you. Another thing that we saw that was an issue is improvement plans. The first thing that we see is that some people don't have improvement plans. It's very important that you have an improvement plan. Some people might say they might not either provide a plan, or they might say, we're going to continue to monitor, or no improvement is needed. But the problem with that is that if we say we're going to continue to monitor, when we get to next semester and we have to reflect on that improvement plan, there's nothing for us to reflect on, because we just said we're not going to improve. So we can't assess that in that future cycle. So that immediately makes us non-compliant. And then, some sort of vague or non-committal language, like, well, we need to improve this, or we might try this. It's really important to have some sort of very concrete, committed improvement plan that speaks to our planning. So, they need to be defined, they need to be committed, and they need to be clear to the outside reader. Okay, so when we think about that cycle of improvement, what it looks like, in the first academic year, maybe this is the first year that we're administering an assessment. We'll give the assessment, we'll make an improvement plan for the next cycle. And then when we get to our second year, we administer the assessment, incorporating that improvement plan from the first year. And then we are going to assess the effectiveness of that improvement plan. Did what I change, was it effective? And that's called use of results. Did I use my results for improvement for this year? So, and then based on that improvement plan effectiveness, I need to make a new improvement plan for next year, for the third year, and then so on and so on. We do the same thing in academic year 3, 4, 5, however many years it is, until you really feel like this assessment, my students have got it, I'm teaching it well. So you can see it's a cycle. We call it closing the loop. We call it that cycle of improvement. And that's what we definitely need to be doing with our assessment. Just a couple of other pitfalls that I would encourage you to kind of think about is I saw a lot of this last year where people are just copying and pasting from one year or one semester to the next. We can't do that, because whenever we provide your assessments to SAC-COC, from one year to the next, it's going to be really, really easy for them to tell that you're just mailing it in by, copying and pasting. So we can't do that, obviously. And then also, you all are subject matter experts in your field. And so, just you understand what some of the acronyms are. I would just encourage you to try, because we have outside readers looking at your assessments. You know what they mean, but they may not be a subject matter in biology, for example. So make certain that we're kind of avoiding some of that. One thing that can be really, really helpful in closing the loop is, as you complete your assessments for this year, either print out or just make a list of what your improvement plans are. Do it in May whenever you're doing these assessments, because over the summer you're going to go somewhere else, you're going to hang out, you're going to go to someplace exotic, or you're going to be crafting in your attic like Becky, and then you're going to probably forget what you are going to do in the next academic year. So I would encourage you, just print them out, or or make just some sort of checklist, because really they should serve as your to-do list for that upcoming next year. All right, so the next thing we want to do, we want to shift, and we want to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how we actually do the assessments in outcomes. Before I do that, are there any questions or comments? Kathy, I know you're our other expert in student learning outcomes. Is there anything that you want to add, or anything that would be helpful for everyone?
The only thought I had is that I did complete an assessment cycles on a SLO in microbiology. Lori Threadcount, if some of you may remember her, we worked on it together for several years, and we really got the teaching of a problematic area in good shape. And so you can at that point put it to bed. And we justified that. We talked about, we have fully met our goal. We implemented several steps, and together students are doing very well in this. And we are going to move to a new assessment for next year. So, I guess that in really is what we should all be striving for, that we would, over time, try something, see that it helped, but it didn't quite take care of the issue, add to it, tweak it, try that another year, and finally get to a point where, okay, we've found what works.
That's a great point. I appreciate that, Kathy. Yeah, and she's right. That's the whole point is, can we improve my teaching so students are learning a little bit better? Becky, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. This is always a constant question. Trying to make the experience of the student be congruent from one teacher to the next for the same class, so that the expectations of your college algebra class are the same no matter who your college algebra teacher is. So we have improvement plans that we do as a group. We'll do this in May for the entire semester. What are we planning to do to improve our SLO performance in the college algebra class? But then when I'm filling out the stuff in the computer on my own classes, there's an improvement plan listed for every one. So the ones that I do in the computer are usually, they didn't do well on this test. This is what I'm going to do different. It's more short-term test-to-test things that I'm going to try to do with a particular class. I'm thinking of this closing the loop is more like the thing that we get together as a faculty and talk about. The paperwork that I turn into you about, this is how it went in college algebra overall, and then this is what we're going to try to do. Am I thinking about that right? Because I don't think about the stuff I enter from one SLO to the next in my individual class as the big picture one. I think of the one that we do as a group as the big picture one. This is our improvement plan for next year. This is what we're going to try to assess next year, how it went. Am I thinking about that right?
I think you are, and kind of that's a really, really good question. So kind of thinking about how we do this, we enter all of our, in a perfect world, we enter our assessments for, Math 150. And then, so we have our observations, and then I love that the math faculty gets together after that, because your assessments are, in theory, they're going to feed into the conversation that you have for your overall assessment plan that you're going, or improvement plan that you're going to do as a department for the next year. So I think the way that you're doing it is correct. Go ahead and do your assessment, make your own improvement plans, and use those as kind of fodder to feed into your discussions for that SLO department-wide improvement plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's what we're doing. I just wanted to make sure. I don't want us to be the people getting us in trouble with SACs. So I just want to make sure that we're doing what we're meant to be doing.
All right, thank you. Great question. Anybody
Becky,
else?
this is Kathy. You may be doing this, and I may just not have heard it correctly. But it is possible that SACS could want to look at the individual math faculty assessments. And they would, if they did that, if they asked for that, not just the template, but the assessments the template was based on, they would look for each individual teacher to also be doing improvement plan and follow up every year with, did the improvement plan work, and how do I know, and what am I going to do next year? So that may
Kathy,
be
what
in
you're
what
telling
you
me is,
described, but I just wanted to point out that even if you're doing a group template,
yes,
that
ma'am,
it's
we're doing a
still,
group, yeah. So, Kathy, what you're telling me is in May, when we have our discussion, I need to make sure that everybody is in their own individual assessment of their SLOs, that they need to be mirroring these same sorts of ideas, maybe not in as great a detail, uh, but sort of alluding. One of the things that we've all agreed on, we need to get students into tutoring. That is always one of the big things that we try to do from one test to the next if things aren't going well. And we're using a test as a measure of how well we're meeting each of the SLOs. We found a test that matches sort of what's going on in that SLO, and then we grade each individual problem. We'll get together and talk about comparison of the exams and how we are grading partial credit on the exams based on the idea of sort of like a rubric when you would score an SLO. So we're trying to actually play by the rules, but I just want to make sure that we are reporting our results in such a way that it's obvious what's going on here.
And
Um,
and I would say, Becky, that whenever we turn in, typically I'm the one that writes 8.2 for the college, and I'm going to include both copies of your SLO improvement plan templates as primary evidence, and then I'm also going to provide this. Last time it was like 100 pages of assessments of all of the faculty over time. Now they're welcome to dig down into that, and
right.
have fun, right? Um,
Yeah.
but also in the narrative, I'm going to point out, I'm going to use the math faculty as a shining example that they're using their individual class assessments to have department-wide conversations about improvement. So the way that you guys are doing it, if and I have been a reviewer for 8.2, I would give you guys a gold star plus. So keep
Okay.
doing what you're doing.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much.
All right. Well, let's move on into the nuts and bolts of how we do assessments. So to get into our campus labs or anthology, they're calling it anthology now. We go to our faculty and staff homepage, which we get there from quick links and then faculty and staff. And then we scroll down a little bit to the anthology campus labs platforms tile, and then we click on that. And then we use our KCTCS login. So it's not our email, but it's our actual username and then our password that we use to get into our email or computer. And that's going to take us to a page that gives us three options. What we want to do is we want to look at outcomes because that is the module that we use for general education. So we click on that. And you may have, depending, I'm able to see all of the units, but you're probably only going to be able to see the units that you have access to. So you're going to go down and say, for example, you are in, I don't think I had loaded anything. Maybe you're we'll just have English since Catherine is here. So maybe, Catherine, you have an English 101 class, and say, for example, you're teaching. Um, well, the first thing to do before we do this is make certain we're on the right academic year. All right. So we're not on the correct academic year. So make certain that we're on the most recent academic year, which is 2023. Okay. And then now it's going to load in and show us those that are from this particular academic year. So I'm going to say, for example, if I'm teaching 3502A, or 3502, actually, the A is for us. Then what I would do, actually, it looks like that was from this last fall. Let me find spring here. Let me see if I can find one for spring. Here we go. So here's an English 102 that's for spring. And the first thing that we should see is we should have some SLOs here that have been tied down, and I'm not seeing it. So I need to look at that real quick. Let's go instead to math. And I'm going to need to change our divisions for next year, obviously. Spring 2024, Math 150. All right, so Math 150 has been assigned for Spring 2024. All of these different SLOs. So say, for example, that I am teaching, it looks like somebody it's fall 23. Why am I not seeing any? Oh, I just clicked on the fall one. That's why. All right, we finally found one. Sorry about that. Kind of fumbling around. So say you, for example, you're teaching 35P1. You'll notice that there are no SLOs there, but you'll notice that there is a marker with 3 here. So if we click over here to the right, we can click on the SLOs for which we're responsible. So say, for example, we want to do an assessment on 2.1. We would just click on 2.1 over here. Now, you might be tempted to create a general education SLO. Please don't do that because then it won't. Then your data won't roll up to the very top of our organization. So make sure you click over here to the right where you have the little 3. If you don't have any SLOs tied, then let me know and I will make certain that we get that fixed for you. So we click on 2.1 because that's what we're going to assess. Then we click on assessment. So Math 150, 35P1 will perform assessment of this particular outcome. So Becky, give me the name of an assessment that you guys would do. In Math 150. Would it maybe be a Unit 2? I'm just going to make one up. Unit 2 exam. Okay. So we've already said it's an examination, so we'll just call it an exam. And then you can put your date in. Say it's today. And then you type in the purpose. Is it formulative? So are you doing this during the learning process? Are you assessing prior to or at the end of interaction? And really depending on when you're giving the test is what you would choose here. The result type, you could give the total achievement levels or you can put in individual student scores. So I like the idea of providing individual scores, so I'm going to click that. Some other things we can do. So say, for example, we're doing a paper test. The scoring method is going to be, say, for example, you have, you can either do like a rubric that might be on points or maybe it's a percentage-based thing. So say, for example, it's a rubric. You would use points instead of percentages, right? So we typically use say it's a 4-point rubric. We typically use 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And even though it's a 4-point rubric, we could try putting 4 in here. But if we do that, we get an error. So it's okay to go ahead and put 5 here, even though we know that it's only a maximum of 5. Okay, because if a student still got 4, then we know that they would have exceeded expectations for this. So we know that the buckets that the students go in is 0 to 1 is that minimum score, 1 to 2 much improvement, 2 to 3 some, 3 is met expectations, and exceeded expectations would be 4 points or 5 points, even though we've made up this fake maximum score. Likewise, if we want to do percentage, we can just put in our numbers here. So, much improvement might be 50, 70, 80, and then 90, and then 100. Now you can really kind of make up, your own thresholds, just so that whatever score that you feel maps into these different buckets goes. And so say, for example, it is a math exam, so it's probably percentage based. Then I'm going to just click submit. And then you'll see that you have now an assessment called Unit 2 exam, except we don't have any results yet. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to add results. Now, if you want to, you can certainly upload a copy of the exam, nothing that has FERPA protected information. But if you want to upload a PDF copy of the exam or the assessment, you could do that here. But for now, we're just going to add our results. And then the first thing that we can do is we can import the course roster. So I have loaded the students. So now what you can do is you can start entering scores from the exam. And we'll just do this. So say, for example, this particular student, so remember, I load this data at the beginning of the semester. So it's possible that you may have students that are no longer in the class. Maybe they withdrew. If the student withdrew, do not give them a score. Just pass over them completely. All right. So pretend that this student withdrew from the class. Don't give them a score at all. Say for example, you have a student that might still be in the class, but didn't take the exam. Maybe they were gone that day. For that student, you would give them a 0. Okay. So again, student that's withdrawn, do not score. Student that missed the assessment, give them a 0. And then we're just going to continue on, entering scores all the way through. And I'm not going to do all of these, but you can kind of see you could do that for the entire class. So the next thing is we would put in an analysis. And basically, what that does is we're going to analyze the data for the assessment. Once we have done our entered our scores, we're just going to kind of think about it. So maybe we had 60% of students did extremely well. Whatever your analysis of the data is, you can put that in this field. And then we come to the all-important use of results. And in this, we're going to reflect on that effectiveness of our prior term improvement plan and their effect on this term's outcomes. So, say, for example, Becky, do you remember what one of your math improvement plans were for this year?
One of our improvement plans is always try to get them to come to tutoring more.
Okay. So last year, our improvement plan was to encourage students to attend tutoring. This plan was effective, as many.
I wish it were effective.
I'm just going positive on us today, Becky.
Okay.
Many of our students did attend. And overall scores on this assessment improved by 3%. Okay. So in this once in these or two sentences, sorry, we've met all of our requirements. We said we've restated last year's improvement plan. We've assessed that plan, and then we tell them why we know the plan was effective or not effective. Okay, because we give them some sort of data point to help us understand why it was effective. And then based on our results, we want to create a list of things to improve next year. So we can just start adding improvement plans. So next year, I will ... Okay. And then you could just put that improvement plan, you click create, and then you can put in multiple improvement plans. My encouragement is to only change one thing at a time. I've seen some of our instructors and some of our faculty do, say that they were going to do 34 different improvement plans. And while that's great, any scientist is going to tell you that if you have multiple variables, it's going to be difficult for you to determine which of them moved the needle in a positive way. So to that end, I really encourage you to maybe just make one improvement plan. That way you can really go through that cycle of improvement. Kathy, I see with you with your hand up.
Yes. Above analysis, there's
Mm-hmm.
this little statement that says provide context. I'm trying to read it and you're moving it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay. So provide content to the results by further describing the assessment. And I was reading small print there. There's no place where you've actually told the reader what this assessment was. Now, if it's an exam, it's kind of easier to get at. But if it
Mm-hmm.
was some kind of, let's say, lab experiment, I'm thinking that it wants the reader to know what was being assessed.
Sure.
I wish they give it in a separate box so that people would, just put
Mm-hmm.
that in one box and then put their analysis in another. But without a separate box, I've always included that in the analysis, just a description of what it is we're analyzing.
100% appropriate and a great point. So, if you want to put that description of what it was about, you can do that in the analysis field along with your analysis of the data. So that's perfectly fine there. Great
And the
point.
other question I have for you is that
Mm-hmm.
someplace, I think before you get to the screen, it asks you if you want to do a I don't use this language, but a direct assessment or link it to an assessment.
Right.
And I think that uh,
It asks
instructors
you
that teach, go ahead.
it asks you if you want if you want this section to to directly assess this SLO, or if you want to link it to another SLO.
Yes.
So so
So
so go
what
ahead.
do we prefer there?
Always direct assessment, because if you do that, then you're just passing the buck to somebody else. So always the direct rather than the related.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, so I've put in all of our information for this. We've got sort of analysis, which you can use your imagination there and do it. I've got a compliant sample of use of results. It's short, sweet, and compliant. And then in theory, I've got an improvement plan. You're going to have to, once you have everything here, another thing you can do is you can select your confidence level, which best describes your level of confidence in the accuracy. So maybe we're highly confident. Okay. Then we just click submit. And because once we've done that, then you'll see that we have results for our assessment. You can see that we had out of the 9 students that took the exam that were in the class at the time, that 5 of them were above that level of expectations, and then we had 4 of them that were below it. So that really kind of gives us some further context on how our students are doing at the time. Now, whoever's teaching this is probably not going to want to see this. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this assessment.
Brian,
And yes,
I wanted to point out that to me, seeing that visual graph really pulls together what my analysis of results is going to look like. So I
absolutely.
always submit, get to that graph, and that just because you submit it doesn't mean you can't go back, because
Mm-hmm.
that view results is still there. That button is still there. So after
Yep,
I view that graph and get an overall visual, then I can click on that results again and go in and do my analysis of results. And that has
absolutely.
been very helpful to me.
That makes a lot of sense and is really, really helpful. I agree with you. So, I'm just going to kind of drill down to something that got assessed last semester. That one did not get done from the fall. I'm just looking for one that got done here. All right. So for this class, and for that SLO, so say for example, we're going through and we're doing this SLO. We've entered our scores, and then this, I don't know who did this one, but this is completely non-compliant because they didn't put anything in. So this might as well not have even been done. But once they put in the scores before they did the analysis, um, they, like Kathy said, they could click the submit button, and then they can see that, see these results, and then they can go back into result details and put in their analysis there. Okay. All right. So that takes us through how to enter in an assessment. Are there any questions about how to enter an assessment? Or
Brian, just one thing. Um,
yep.
we've talked about, since we're using a test, we use percentages, and we actually sort of talked about the percentages we would use. Is there not? Do we not have to be consistent? Does everybody not have to do the same thing?
So I think in a perfect world in math, since you're all on Math 150, it might be helpful to have them normed across all of the instructors, because essentially what we're doing with our scores is we're putting them into the different bins. So, if we determine that 85 and above is exceeds expectations, that makes sense to norm them um, across your whole department. So 70 to 85 might be your met expectations, and then everything below that might fall into the different buckets. So I think it does make sense to kind of have those scores the same.
Because we've talked about the idea that there's there's a difference in the level of Fs. You failed with 20, you failed with 50. That's not the same situation, and it's not the same
Mm-hmm.
outlook. So,
Right.
we wouldn't expect everybody that failed the test to necessarily be in the same bucket. We were
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that rubric about, deciding based on the levels of how well they got the idea when
Mm-hmm.
we decided, it's not a point system, it's percent, but it's that same sort of idea. We've
Okay.
talked some about that. I will make sure I made myself a note at our math planning workshop to let people know that they do have to, in their individual plans, not just our communal document that I submit about what we're going to do to improve the 150s overall. That, like that one you just looked at, that needs to not happen. And
Yeah.
I
Thank
will
you.
request I would request that if somebody made a mistake, which they easily could have,
Sure. Sure.
as we've had some staffing changes, and you sometimes forget that some people are out of the loop. I will go back and mention that, and I haven't even entered mine from fall yet. I always do it all at the same time in the computer. I have all my stuff ready, so a person could go back in and fix that.
Sure.
And I'll encourage them to do that, to put the narrative pieces in there if they left it out. So hopefully we will get that one fixed. Sorry about that.
No, it's
I
okay.
don't
Thank
do
you very
that
much,
so much.
Becky.
Sorry about
I appreciate it. All right, last thing I want to talk about, I want to respect your time because it is Friday. We want to try to get done on time here. Last thing I want to talk about, this applies mostly to our program or our discipline coordinators. So, that's obviously that's Becky. Kathy, you're biology department chair, right? You're kind of the coordinator for that.
Yes.
Or is it okay? And then obviously, Catherine, you're part of the English faculty there. But what we need from every program slash department is we need an SLO improvement plan template, and that's a simple one-page Word document. And so it's going to be the idea of this is to report on one outstanding SLO from your discipline or your subject that may need more improvement. So, even if some of you report on 7 or 8 SLOs, I would just encourage you find one SLO that you really want to focus on, and because this is what we're providing primarily to SACs. Yes, they are going to see your individual assessments, but they're also but the first line evidence that we provide for them are the improvement plan templates. Okay, so you don't have to report on 8 or 9 SLOs. Maybe choose one that's really outstanding in your mind that you really, really want to focus on this next year. We use these for SACS-COC and then we're also going to provide them to CPE for that program review process. But basically, what it is that one-page summary of SLOs in your discipline. The way that this document looks is very simple. You're going to just I'll send out the Word document after this, and you'll type in the name of your department, your discipline, or your program. You're going to put in the specific SLO that you assess, so the number of the SLO and maybe the title of the SLO. You want to describe the assessment used in this template. And then you want to provide aggregate scores for the assessments. So you can pull these directly from Campus Labs or Anthology. You can say, we had 7 students that exceeded expectations, 5 that met, and so forth, all the way through the different 5 buckets. So provide those aggregate scores. And then basically what we're going to do is, as a department, or as a department of one, you're going to assess your prior improvement plan. So whatever you had last year, you're going to talk about whether or not these were effective in student learning. So I've again provided those language elements for you for the boilerplate language. So you can use that language to type your response in here. And then lastly, you're going to talk about that department-wide action or improvement plan that you're going to utilize in the next year. And again, we talked about it earlier, but no improvement needed. Continuing to monitor. We can't use those. So we do need you to fill these improvement plan templates out because they're going to serve as what you do for the upcoming year. Kind of that reminder for us is that we need to have all of our SLO assessments for general education. They need to be entered by May 31st of this year. The improvement plan templates, it's great if you are able to have them in by May 31st as well, but we understand some of you, it may be difficult to get all of your faculty together before you leave town. Some of you prefer to just get this done in August. That way you can, get them back together with a fresh mind and you can really do that. But we do need them sent to me as well as your division chair and our chief academic officer, Mike Connect, by August the 31st. And I'll remind you guys, when you come back in August, but if you don't turn it in May, but, just realize that, we really have to have good planning this year, because whenever we write our 5th-year review in 2027, we're going to use 3 years of information. And this is the first year of information that we're going to be sharing with SAC COC. We're also going to be providing it for CPE. So make certain that what we do this year is compliant and really helps us out. So we've talked about that. Last thing I want to do is give you your final exam. Ask, am I compliant or not? Think about the improvement plan and what we've discussed in improvement plans today. So I've given you the answer to the first one. If we put in no improvements are necessary, we know that that's non-compliant, right? So let me ask example 2. Let's read example 2. Our results were 100%. So there's no way for us to improve. Therefore, we will continue to monitor future results. Compliant or non-compliant?
Non-compliant,
All right. And why is that?
because you said earlier that we don't want to say to monitor future results.
Exactly right. There's saying that there's always something that we can improve on, right? So
Yes.
I agree with Sherry. That is non-compliant. All right, example 3. Next semester, I will provide examples and opportunities, graded and non-graded, for students to identify and or discuss the enduring issues related to history topics as a single assignment. Is this compliant or non-compliant? Anybody? It's not a game show. Um,
I'm going to
but
go with compliant.
I agree with you 100%. You've been definite. You've been very clear on what you're going to do. You said next semester, we're committed to this. I will. And you have a very clear thing of what you're going to do to try to improve. So very good, Sherry. That is compliant. Last thing is, let's look at a couple of use of results. So in this idea, we reflect on the effectiveness and we assess our prior improvement plan. So example 1, I had no improvement plan last semester, so I cannot reflect on the effectiveness of prior improvement plans. Is this compliant or non-compliant? Anybody?
I would say it's not compliant unless you're a brand new faculty member.
Exactly. I would agree with you on that. Example 2, students did not do as well with this SLO. It's possible students overlooked this section in the assignment directions. Is this compliant or non-compliant? So think about what we have to do in use of results. We have to reflect on last year's improvement plan and determine whether or not it was effective or not, and then provide a data point related to that. With that in mind, does it meet the test of compliance?
I would say that it's not compliant because you see the problem, but you don't say anything about how you'll fix it.
Right. And you didn't talk about last year's improvement plan at all. You just
Right,
basically what you've done is you've just analyzed the problem. You haven't done
right.
any. Yeah.
But I mean, that could be an important part of the information. It's like I think my directions were um, confusing, and I'm not certain that my results adequately reflect how well the improvement plan worked, because I think there was another problem. You could
Yep.
you could have some analysis piece as part of the picture, but I don't think that can be all of it.
Sure. I would agree with you on that. All right. Example 3, last semester I said that I would focus on supplemental resources to clarify the assessment's concepts. Any thoughts about compliance on this one?
I would say it's non-compliant. It's missing a second half. You've
And
stated
I-
what your improvement plan was, but you have not been reflected on its either achievement or non-achievement.
100% correct. Very good. Last year, example 4, last year I said I would create a video lecture to help students master this concept. I believe that this was effective because 12% more students demonstrated mastery. Compliant or non-compliant?
I'm going with compliant.
I agree totally, Sherry. And the reason why is that we've stated what last year's plan was. We said whether or not it was effective, and we give some data point that tells us why. Last one is kind of a trick question. It's your bonus question. Last year I said I would provide my PowerPoints to help students. I don't believe that this was effective because student mastery decreased by 5%. Is this compliant or non-compliant? The only difference is we weren't effective. Is it still compliant?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't say every experiment's going to work. Yeah, it's compliant.
100%. So well done to both of you, because yeah, you know the main thing is they just want to see us striving for improvement. So it's okay if your experiment fails. You just have to demonstrate that we are doing making efforts. So that's everything that I have for today. Are there any other questions or any other comments before we adjourn?
Brian, I had a question back on the slide that focused on you saying that you only really had to do one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify that? If you teach multiple classes, are you saying that I don't need to do it for every class? I just need to choose one class?
So,
Or
so, so this is for the SLO improvement plan template. So that's separate from your SLO assessments. You're still going to
oh,
assess
okay.
every class within Anthology.
Okay.
But the improvement plan template is a separate thing that you use. Basically, we use it to summarize all of our classes and kind of the overarching themes that we're seeing from all of our classes.
Gotcha.
Does that
Thank you
help?
so much. Yes,
Sure.
yes.
Okay, and I will send that out afterwards. So, um, any other questions before we close? I really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you, everyone, for your good input, and for being here on a Friday morning. Again, I would just stress that as you start doing your assessments, if you have a question, you want me to just double check it or provide feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out. Give me a call. Say, hey, does this look reasonable? Does this look compliant to you? That sort of thing. And I'd be more than happy to help with you with that. So don't hesitate to reach out. So thanks, everyone. I hope you
Thank
have
you,
a great
Brian.
day, and we'll be talking to you soon.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
Thanks,
you.
Brian.
Bye-bye.
Bye.